October 4th, 1883, a train departs Paris bound for Constantinople. On board, 40 passengers, diplomats, businessmen, journalists invited to witness history. They're about to embark on a journey that will take several days, cross multiple borders, and change travel forever. This is the first run of the Orient Express. But here's what most people don't know. The train that became synonymous with luxury, mystery, and intrigue, it almost failed multiple times. And the story of how it survived, how it became a legend, involves espionage, murder, revolution, and one Belgian entrepreneur who refused to give up on his dream. This is the real story of the Orient Express, and it's far more fascinating than any Agatha Christie novel. Before we board this legendary train, let me set the stage. In 1883, traveling from Western Europe to the Ottoman Empire was brutal. You could take a ship, which meant weeks at sea and the risk of storms. Or you could go overland, which meant multiple trains, horse-drawn carriages, terrible roads, and constant danger from bandits. Depending on the route and the season, the trip could take many days, sometimes weeks. It was expensive, uncomfortable, and dangerous. Most people simply didn't make the trip unless they absolutely had to. But one man believed there was a better way. His name was Georges Nagelmackers. He was a Belgian banker's son who had traveled to America in the 1860s and been impressed by George Pullman's luxury sleeping cars. Nagelmackers had a vision. What if you could create a train service that offered the same level of luxury as the finest hotels? What if you could travel from Paris to Constantinople in comfort in just a few days without ever leaving your train? It was an audacious idea. The route would cross multiple countries, each with different railway companies, different regulations, and different political interests. The real problem wasn't one simple technical issue. It was borders, paperwork, different railway administrations, and missing links that forced transfers. It would require diplomatic negotiations, massive investment, and innovations that didn't yet exist. Most people told Nagelmackers he was crazy, that it couldn't be done, that even if he built it, no one would pay for it. But Nagelmackers was stubborn, and he was about to prove everyone wrong. But here's the twist. The Orient Express that became famous, the train of legend and mystery, it wasn't the train that ran on that first journey in 1883. The real Orient Express, the one that captured the world's imagination, wouldn't emerge for another decade. And the story of how it evolved is a story of persistence, innovation, and a little bit of luck. Let's start with that first journey. October 4th, 1883. The train that departed Paris wasn't even called the Orient Express yet. It was officially the Express d'Orient, and it was more of a proof of concept than a regular service. Nagelmackers had invited journalists and dignitaries to demonstrate that his vision could work. The train itself was impressive. Sleeping cars with mahogany paneling and velvet upholstery, a dining car serving French cuisine, gaslighting, steam heating. For 1883, it was the height of luxury, but the journey was far from smooth. The train could only run as far as Giurgiu, on the Romanian-Bulgarian border. From there, passengers had to take a ferry across the Danube, then board a different train to Varna on the Black Sea. Then they took a ship to Constantinople. It wasn't the seamless journey Nagelmackers had promised, but it was faster and more comfortable than any alternative. The journey took 80 hours compared to weeks by other means. The press coverage was enthusiastic. Newspapers across Europe reported on this marvel of modern travel, and slowly passengers began to book tickets. But Nagelmackers faced enormous challenges. The route crossed the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria, and the Ottoman Empire. Each country had its own railway company, its own regulations, and its own political interests. Negotiating agreements with all of them was a nightmare. And then there was the technical challenge. The real problem wasn't one simple technical issue. It was borders, paperwork, different railway administrations, and missing links that forced transfers. Nagelmackers solved the biggest part of the passenger experience by creating a company, the Compagnie Internationale des Wagons Lits, that owned the luxury cars. These cars could be attached to different locomotives in different countries, keeping the standard of comfort consistent, even when operators changed across borders. But the real breakthrough came by the late 1880s and into the 1890s. After years of negotiation and construction, new links and agreements reduced transfers and tightened schedules. The journey became increasingly continuous, closer to what Nagelmackers had envisioned, a luxurious corridor across Europe, and the timing was perfect. The late 1890s and early 1900s were the golden age of European travel. The continent was at peace, economies were booming, and a new class of wealthy travelers, businessmen, diplomats, and tourists wanted to experience the exotic East without the hardships of traditional travel. The Orient Express offered exactly that. You could leave Paris in the evening, dine on French cuisine, sleep in a comfortable bed, and wake up in Vienna, then Budapest, then Bucharest, then Constantinople, each city more exotic than the last. But here's what made the Orient Express more than just a train. It was the passengers, because from the very beginning, the Orient Express attracted a fascinating mix of people. Diplomats carrying secret documents, spies gathering intelligence, businessmen making deals, aristocrats seeking adventure, and criminals fleeing justice. The train became a microcosm of European society, a moving stage where the dramas of the age played out. One of the most famous early passengers was King Ferdinand of Bulgaria, who used the train regularly to travel between his kingdom and Western Europe. But there were also less savory characters. Stories of robberies, scandals, and close calls circulated, feeding the train's aura of danger and intrigue. The Orient Express wasn't just luxurious, it was dangerous, exciting, unpredictable. The train also became associated with espionage. During the years leading up to World War I, European powers were locked in an intelligence war. Spies needed to travel between capitals, gathering information and making contacts. And the Orient Express, which connected all the major European capitals, was the perfect cover. You could board in Paris, have a chance meeting with a contact in Vienna, and be in Constantinople by the end of the week. It became a natural setting for diplomacy, and yes, the kind of discreet meetings that intelligence work thrives on. This reputation for intrigue was cemented by World War I. When the war broke out in 1914, the Orient Express stopped running. The route crossed battle lines. Countries that had been connected by the train were now enemies. For 4 years, the legendary train sat idle. But when the war ended in 1918, the Orient Express returned, and it returned to a completely different Europe. The Austro-Hungarian Empire had collapsed. The Ottoman Empire was gone. New countries had appeared on the map: Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia. The borders had been redrawn, and the Orient Express route had to be redrawn with them. Nagelmackers' company adapted, creating new routes to serve the new political reality. The Simplon Orient Express, launched in 1919, went through Switzerland and Italy to avoid the unstable Balkans. The Aalborg Orient Express went through Austria and Romania. But the 1920s and 1930s were the true golden age of the Orient Express. This was the era that would inspire Agatha Christie, Graham Greene, and countless other writers. The train became a symbol of glamour and sophistication. Movie stars rode it, royalty rode it, and the wealthy elite of Europe made it their preferred way to travel. The service on board was impeccable. The dining car served multi-course French meals prepared by trained chefs. The wine list included the finest vintages. The sleeping compartments were fitted with the latest amenities, and the staff, trained by Nagelmackers' company, provided service that rivaled the best hotels in Europe. Riding the Orient Express wasn't just about getting from Paris to Constantinople. It was about the experience. The journey itself was the destination. But it was also during this era that the Orient Express became associated with mystery and crime. Partly, this was because of real incidents. In 1929, the train was trapped in a snowdrift in Turkey for 5 days. Passengers had to be rescued by local villagers. The incident made international headlines and added to the train's reputation for adventure. And there were robberies, scandals, and occasional violence. The Orient Express attracted wealthy passengers, and wealthy passengers attracted criminals. But the real reason the Orient Express became associated with mystery was Agatha Christie. In 1934, she published Murder on the Orient Express. a novel featuring her famous detective Hercule Poirot solving a murder on the train. The book was a sensation. It captured the glamour, the international intrigue, and the sense of danger that surrounded the real Orient Express, and it cemented the train's place in popular culture. Christie had actually ridden the Orient Express multiple times. Her husband was an archaeologist who worked in the Middle East, and they used the train to travel to his dig sites. She knew the train intimately, the layout of the cars, the rhythms of the journey, the mix of passengers, and she used all of that knowledge to create a story that felt authentic. Even though the murder was fiction, the setting was real, and readers around the world fell in love with the idea of the Orient Express. But then came World War II, and once again the Orient Express stopped running. The Nazis used parts of the route for military transport, other sections were destroyed in fighting, and when the war ended in 1945, Europe was divided. The Iron Curtain fell across the continent, cutting the Orient Express route in half. Countries that had been connected by the train were now on opposite sides of the Cold War. The Orient Express tried to adapt. The Simplon Orient Express continued to run through Yugoslavia, which remained outside the Soviet bloc, but it was a shadow of its former self. The luxury was gone, the glamorous passengers were gone, and air travel was becoming faster and cheaper. By the 1960s, the Orient Express was losing money. Fewer and fewer people wanted to spend days on a train when they could fly in hours. The final blow came in 1977. By the late 1970s, the classic Paris-Istanbul Orient Express era had effectively ended. It was the end of an era. The train that had connected Europe for nearly a century was gone. The sleeping cars were sold off. The dining cars were scrapped. And the name Orient Express seemed destined to become nothing more than a memory. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn, because the Orient Express didn't die. It was reborn. In 1982, an American businessman named James Sherwood bought several of the original Orient Express cars at auction. He spent millions restoring them to their 1920s glory. And in 1982, he launched the Venice Simplon Orient Express, a luxury tourist train running from London to Venice. This wasn't the original Orient Express. It didn't go to Istanbul. It was explicitly a tourist service, not transportation, but it captured the spirit of the original. The restored cars were magnificent, the service was impeccable, and passengers were willing to pay thousands of dollars for the experience of riding a train that evoked the golden age of travel. The Venice Simplon Orient Express was a success. It proved that there was still demand for luxury rail travel, even in the age of jets, and it kept the Orient Express legend alive. Today, the train still runs, carrying passengers who want to experience a taste of 1920s glamour. It's not cheap. Today, it's a premium experience that often costs several $1,000s and up, depending on route, cabin, and season. But for many people, it's worth it, because you're not just buying transportation, you're buying a piece of history. But the real Orient Express, the working train that connected Paris to Istanbul, is gone. The route still exists. It's sometimes possible to piece together the journey by rail, but routes and schedules change, so you have to check current timetables. But you'll have to change trains multiple times. The journey takes days, and there's no dining car serving French cuisine, no sleeping compartments with mahogany paneling, no white-gloved waiters. The magic is gone. So why did the Orient Express become a legend? Why does this train, which stopped running nearly 50 years ago, still capture our imagination? I think there are several reasons. First, timing. The Orient Express operated during a unique period in history. From the 1880s to the 1970s, it connected a Europe that was constantly changing. It survived 2 world wars, the collapse of empires, and the Cold War. It was a constant in a world of upheaval, and it represented a kind of cosmopolitan, international ideal that seems lost today. Second, luxury. The Orient Express wasn't just transportation, it was an experience. In an era before air travel, before mass tourism, it offered a level of comfort and sophistication that was unmatched. Riding the Orient Express was a status symbol. It said something about who you were and where you belonged in society. Third, mystery. The association with spies, criminals, and intrigue gave the Orient Express a romantic aura. It wasn't just a train, it was a stage for human drama, and writers like Agatha Christie understood this and used it to create stories that have endured for generations. And fourth, nostalgia. The Orient Express represents a lost world, a time when travel was slower, more deliberate, more romantic, when the journey mattered as much as the destination. In our age of budget airlines and high-speed trains, there's something appealing about that, something we've lost and wish we could reclaim. The Orient Express was never just a train, it was an idea that you could connect distant places and different cultures, that you could travel in comfort and style, that the journey itself could be an adventure. And even though the original train is gone, that idea survives in the Venice, Simplon, Orient Express, in the countless books and movies inspired by the train, and in our collective imagination. Georges Nagelmackers died in 1905, long before the Orient Express reached its peak. But he lived long enough to see his vision become reality, to see his train connecting Europe, to see it become synonymous with luxury and adventure. And if he could see the Orient Express today, see how it's remembered and celebrated, I think he'd be proud. Because he didn't just build a train, he built a legend. So here's my question for you. If you could ride the Orient Express in its golden age, which era would you choose? The 1890s, when it was new and adventurous, the 1920s at the height of its glamour, or the 1960s in its twilight years? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the real story of the Orient Express, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We've got more fascinating railway history coming your way. Until next time, remember that the best journeys are the ones where the destination is just an excuse for the adventure along the way.